In a quiet town where kindness often went unnoticed, there was one person who made it impossible to ignore: Emily, a teacher whose warmth and dedication lit up her classroom like the morning sun. Emily was more than just a teacher. She was a friend, a mentor, and sometimes even a lifeline for her students. Known for her gentle smile and unyielding commitment to her class, she inspired every child who walked through her door. Among her students was Tommy, a quiet boy who sat in the back row. Tommy's shy demeanor made him almost invisible, but Emily had a knack for noticing what others didn't. It was his shoes that first caught her attention, worn out, patched up, and far too small for his growing feet. In class, Tommy seemed distracted, struggling to keep up with lessons. Emily began to piece together the puzzle, realizing that his family might be facing challenges they weren't sharing. Hey there! If you're enjoying this story so far and want to see what Emily does next to help Tommy, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for the heartwarming ending. It's a moment you don't want to miss. Despite her limited salary, Emily decided she couldn't just stand by. After school, she stopped by a local store, carefully selecting a pair of shoes she thought Tommy would love. They weren't just shoes, they were a symbol of care, of dignity, and of hope. With the gift wrapped and ready, Emily prepared herself for what came next. A gesture of kindness she hoped would make all the difference in Tommy's life. But little did she know, this act would set off a chain of events that would impact far more than just one boy. Stay tuned for the next segment to see how Emily's heartfelt gesture changes everything. The next morning, Emily walked into her classroom with a mix of nerves and excitement. The small gift, neatly wrapped in cheerful paper, rested in her bag. She couldn't wait to see Tommy's reaction. When the time was right, she quietly called him to her desk, her smile warm and inviting. "Tommy, I noticed you've been needing these," she said softly, sliding the gift toward him. His wide eyes darted from the package to her face, unsure if it was really meant for him. "For me?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Yes," Emily said, her voice steady but kind. "You deserve them." Tommy's small hands trembled as he opened the package, revealing a brand new pair of sneakers. His face lit up, a rare smile breaking through his usual shyness. He stammered out a quiet, "Thank you," his gratitude so pure that it nearly brought tears to Emily's eyes. The rest of the day passed like any other, but Emily felt a quiet satisfaction. She believed she'd done the right thing. But in the world beyond her classroom, things were stirring. By the next morning, Emily was summoned to the principal's office. Mrs. Hargrave, the stern and by-the-book administrator, sat across from Emily with a serious expression. "I understand you gave a gift to one of your students," Mrs. Hargrave began, her tone sharp. Emily's heart sank. "Yes, I did," she admitted. "I noticed he was in need, and I wanted to help." Mrs. Hargrave sighed, her fingers interlaced on the desk. "Emily, you know the school's policy on personal gifts. We have strict guidelines for a reason. Acts like this, while well-meaning, can create complications." "I wasn't trying to break the rules," Emily explained, her voice trembling. "I only wanted to help a child who needed it." "I don't doubt your intentions," Mrs. Hargrave replied, her tone softening slightly. "But this is a serious matter. The district takes these policies very seriously." The conversation ended with Emily being placed on leave while the situation was reviewed. She returned home that evening, her mind spinning. Doubts crept in. Had she done the wrong thing? A few days later, the decision was delivered. Emily was terminated from her position. The news hit her like a blow. Teaching wasn't just a job to her, it was her passion, her purpose, and now it was gone. She packed up her classroom in silence, her students watching with confusion and sadness. Tommy, too, seemed to sense something was wrong. He clutched his new shoes tightly, his face shadowed with worry. As Emily walked out of the school for the last time, she felt a mix of emotions: heartache, anger, and confusion. Her mind raced with questions. What would she do now? Could she ever find a way to continue helping others without being held back by rules and bureaucracy? Her act of kindness had cost her everything, but deep down, Emily knew she couldn't let this be the end of her story. As the days stretched on, Emily found herself struggling to adjust to life without her classroom. The mornings felt hollow without the chatter of her students, and the absence of purpose left her feeling lost. She spent her time walking through the quiet streets of her town, trying to make sense of what had happened. Unbeknownst to Emily, her story had taken on a life of its own. What had started as a simple gesture, a pair of shoes for a student in need, had begun to ripple outward in ways she couldn't have imagined. Parents who had heard about her dismissal were outraged, their voices rising in support of the beloved teacher. Whispers of the story reached the local news, and soon her act of compassion became a topic of conversation far beyond the walls of her school. Emily was hesitant when a reporter first knocked on her door, asking for her side of the story. At first, she didn't want to talk. She wasn't looking for attention, and reliving the events felt painful. But as more people reached out, parents, former students, and even strangers, she began to realize that her story wasn't just about her. It was about kindness and the cost of doing what was right in a world bound by rules. The local news ran a feature about Emily, highlighting her years of dedication as a teacher and her recent dismissal. The story spread quickly, appearing on blogs, social media, and even national news outlets. People were moved by her unwavering commitment to her students and outraged by the consequences she'd faced. Messages poured in from around the country, letters of support, words of encouragement, and stories from others who had faced similar challenges. One of those stories reached the desk of Jonathan Reeves, a billionaire known for his charitable work. Jonathan had built his wealth through technology, but his true passion lay in giving back. He'd spent years funding programs to help children in need, but he'd always felt something was missing, a personal touch, someone who could bring compassion and heart to the work. When Jonathan read about Emily, he was struck by her selflessness. Her willingness to risk everything for the sake of a child was exactly the kind of dedication he admired. He couldn't shake the feeling that Emily was someone he needed to meet. A few days later, Emily's phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, but something made her answer. "Hello, is this Emily?" the voice on the other end asked. "Yes, this is she," Emily replied cautiously. "This is Jonathan Reeves," the man said. "I've been following your story, and I believe you and I share a common purpose. I'd like to discuss an opportunity that could change both of our lives." Emily's breath caught in her throat. The voice was calm but sincere, and the words carried a weight that made her pulse quicken. She didn't know what to expect, but for the first time in weeks, a glimmer of hope stirred within her. The call with Jonathan Reeves was unlike anything Emily had ever experienced. His voice carried both warmth and purpose as he explained why he'd reached out. He told her how her story had inspired him, how her small act of kindness had revealed a greater need, one he believed she was uniquely suited to address. "I think what you did was extraordinary," Jonathan said. "Not just because you helped a child in need, but because you acted with courage when it wasn't easy. That's the kind of heart we need in the world, and I'd like to work with you to make a bigger impact." Jonathan proposed an idea that left Emily speechless. He wanted to create a program, something tangible and lasting, to support underprivileged children across the country. He envisioned scholarships, mentorships, and resources for families struggling to make ends meet. But he didn't want to do it alone. He wanted Emily to lead the charge, lending her compassion and first-hand experience to the initiative. "I'm calling it Emily's Heart Fund," Jonathan said. a program built on the very principles you embody: kindness, empathy, and action. Emily sat in stunned silence, her emotions swirling. Part of her felt unworthy of such a grand opportunity, but another part, the part that had always believed in helping others, no matter the cost, felt a spark of excitement. "I don't know what to say," Emily finally managed, her voice trembling. "Say yes," Jonathan encouraged, his tone gentle but firm. "Together we can take what you started with Tommy and turn it into something that changes lives." It didn't take Emily long to make up her mind. The idea of helping children on a larger scale, of ensuring no child had to feel the way Tommy did, filled her with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt since leaving the classroom. Within weeks, Emily found herself immersed in a new world. Meetings, brainstorming sessions, and phone calls filled her days as she and Jonathan began laying the groundwork for the fund. Though the work was demanding, Emily thrived in this new role. Her heart, once broken by the loss of her teaching career, now beat with renewed strength and determination. The first major initiative of Emily's Heart Fund was a scholarship program designed to provide not just financial aid, but also mentorship and emotional support for children in need. Emily insisted that the program be holistic, addressing not only academic needs, but also the personal struggles many children face. "Kindness isn't just about giving," Emily said during one planning session. "It's about understanding what people need and helping them find the tools to succeed." As the program launched, Emily began traveling to schools, speaking to teachers, parents, and students. She shared her story, not to gain sympathy, but to inspire others to take action in their own communities. Slowly but surely, the ripple effect of her work began to grow. What had started as one small act of kindness was now blossoming into something far greater. Emily was no longer just helping individual children. She was building a legacy of compassion and change that would touch countless lives for years to come. As Emily settled into her new role, a sense of fulfillment began to replace the heartache she'd carried since losing her teaching position. Every day brought fresh challenges, but they also brought purpose, a purpose she hadn't realized she needed. Working with Jonathan Reeves and his team gave her the chance to channel her compassion into something far-reaching, something that could transform the lives of countless children. The scholarship program was just the beginning. Emily spent her days meeting with educators, community leaders, and families, listening to their stories and learning about the barriers many children faced. These conversations fueled her determination to do more. She wasn't simply creating opportunities, she was helping to build a bridge for children to cross over the challenges that had once held them back. One afternoon, Emily visited a small elementary school in a struggling neighborhood. As she walked through the halls, she couldn't help but notice the similarities to the school where she'd taught for so many years. The laughter of children, the smell of crayons, the hopeful energy that hung in the air. It all felt familiar. During a meeting with a group of teachers, Emily shared her journey. She spoke openly about the pain of losing her job, the uncertainty that had followed, and how one small act of kindness had led her to this new chapter. "What I've learned," Emily told them, "is that kindness doesn't stop with one gesture. It's like a seed. You plant it, and it grows in ways you can't always predict. Sometimes it grows in others, inspiring them to act, and sometimes it grows in you, changing your life in ways you never expected." The teachers listened intently, some nodding, others wiping away quiet tears. When she finished speaking, one of them, a young man who reminded Emily of her earlier teaching days, stood up. "You've reminded me why I became a teacher," he said. "It's easy to get caught up in the challenges and forget why we're here, but you've shown me that even the smallest efforts can make a difference." Stories like this became common as Emily continued her work. The impact of Emily's Heart Fund reached beyond the children it directly supported. Communities began to rally around the idea that compassion and action could create real change. Parents organized drives to support struggling families. Teachers found new ways to connect with their students, and even strangers were inspired to perform small acts of kindness in their daily lives. Emily often received letters and messages from people who had heard her story. A woman in another state shared how she'd started a free tutoring program in her neighborhood after reading about Emily's work. A retired teacher wrote to say she'd begun volunteering at a local shelter to help children with their homework. Each story reminded Emily that her journey wasn't just about her or the children she helped. It was about sparking something bigger, a ripple effect of kindness that spread far beyond anything she could have imagined. As she reflected on everything that had happened, Emily felt a quiet joy settle within her. Her path had changed in ways she couldn't have foreseen, but she'd found something even greater than what she'd lost. In helping others, she'd discovered not just a new purpose, but also a deeper understanding of herself and the power of kindness to transform the world. As Emily sat on the porch of her small, cozy home one crisp evening, she found herself reflecting on the incredible journey that had brought her here. The sky above was painted in soft hues of orange and pink, a quiet reminder of life's ever-changing nature. It had been a long road, full of unexpected turns, but in the stillness of that moment, she finally felt at peace. She thought about the girl she'd been when she first started teaching, full of hope and excitement, yet uncertain about what kind of difference she could truly make. Back then, her world had been confined to the four walls of her classroom. Her mission had been simple: to teach, to guide, and to help her students grow. She hadn't known then how much a single act of compassion could ripple outward, touching lives in ways she could never predict. Emily's thoughts drifted to Tommy, the boy who had unknowingly set everything in motion. She remembered his shy smile and the way his face lit up when he saw his new shoes. That moment had been so small, so fleeting, but it had planted a seed that had grown into something far beyond what she ever imagined. Her work with Emily's Heart Fund had taken her to places she'd never dreamed of: schools, community centres, even international conferences where she spoke about the importance of kindness and equity in education. Yet, for all the achievements and recognition, Emily's greatest joy came from seeing the impact of her efforts firsthand. She thought of the children who now had access to better opportunities, the teachers who felt reinvigorated in their work, and the communities that had come together to support one another. What struck Emily most was how her story had inspired others. People she'd never met had taken up the mantle of kindness, each in their own way. Some organised food drives or donated school supplies. Others reached out to struggling neighbours or mentored young people in their communities. It was as if her small gesture had sparked a collective awakening, proving that anyone could make a difference. Emily leaned back in her chair, watching the first stars appear in the sky. She thought about the setbacks that had once seemed insurmountable, losing her job, feeling adrift, questioning her purpose. Those moments had been painful, but they had also pushed her to grow in ways she never thought possible. She realized now that adversity, while difficult, often held the seeds of something greater. If she had never faced those challenges, she might never have discovered the broader purpose waiting for her. As the night deepened, Emily smiled to herself, a quiet but confident smile. Her journey wasn't just about what she'd achieved. It was about the legacy she was leaving behind. A legacy that proved one simple truth: kindness, no matter how small, has the power to transform lives, both the lives of those who give it and those who receive it. And in that truth, Emily found her greatest fulfillment. She hadn't just built a program or changed a few lives. She had shown the world what was possible when compassion met resilience, leaving behind a story that would inspire for generations to come.